Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today, Greg and I are doing our monthly off topic. This is our August edition of just he and I. We've got the 2 videos a month, one just he and I, one with a guest. We'll record that one hopefully at some point here in the future. Hopefully we get a good guest on it. It would be fun. So today for off topic, we wanted to talk about, I know, the National, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we haven't had an off topic since before the National. So this is our chance for you and I to have a discussion about, what we thought, how things went, who we saw, who we met, what we picked up. So I know we both have done a couple of videos on the topic, but this is our chance to discuss, with each other, and hopefully people watching enjoy that.
And when we last talked, we were talking about like targets and our approach, and now it's since happened. So how that all went, compared to like what we went in targeting versus what we left with.
Yep.
And so let's start with you. So, well, I mean, how do we want to do this? We want to get straight to the pickups and the targets, or do we want to talk about like the whole thing? I mean, how do we do this?
Let's talk about the pickups, and then we get done with the pickups, and we could talk about, all the other fun stuff that we got to do.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll stay on the pickup topic for a long time. It's like we won't be leaving it almost immediately.
Correct.
We're good at staying focused with things.
Yes. We will stay on track for at least another minute or two.
Okay, so going into the show, before you're flying there, right? You're flying in. The second day, you know that your brother and dad are showing up, and the first day, the first kind of half day, you know that you are kind of on your own, and you're probably flying in, and the juices are flowing, and you're kind of thinking about what you're going to be looking for and stuff. What were you thinking you were going to buy or pick up or see or scout out while you were there?
On day one?
Sure.
On day one, the only thing that was going through my mind was, I hope Greg gets the Ernie Banks rookie card. So that's what was going through my mind. Then,
are you being serious right now, or are you just joshing with me?
No. I wanted you to get that, because I know that's the card you wanted since you were a kid, right? So that I was like, I want Greg to get this card.
So you're flying in the plane, and you're not thinking, what do I want? You're thinking, I want Greg to get a Banks.
Yeah, because I knew what I wanted, and if I found it, great. If I didn't find it, then I'd buy it somewhere else.
Okay.
But then when I landed and got there, I was thinking, I hope Greg finds the Banks, but also I can't forget to pick up Orlando at the airport.
And then Orlando's plane got delayed. You were supposed to bring Orlando. Now I got to give you a shout out here, because you're not going to toot your own horn, but it's day one of the National. You're landing. You're thinking, before I go over to the show, I got to hang out for about an hour until Orlando lands, and then I can go over to the show with Orlando, because Orlando doesn't have a car and you got a car.
Mm-hmm.
And Orlando's plane gets delayed. So you end up going, okay, well, I'm not going to wait at the airport for 3 hours. So you drive over to the show, 4 hours. So you drive over to the show, you hang out at the show for, I don't know, like an hour or so. And then you leave the show and you go back to the airport to pick up Orlando. And then you bring Orlando back to the show with you.
Yes.
Is that right? I mean, that's pretty cool, dude. Like, you leave the show, you leave the National, because you're like, no, I told Orlando. See, what I probably would have done is just said, hey, dude, grab an Uber. I'll pay you your $30 for the Uber. But you're like, no, I'm picking the guy up. That's pretty cool.
I told him I'd give him a ride, so it's not his fault that that his flight got delayed. And plus, to be honest with you, I fly a lot for work, so I know how I feel when my flight gets late. It puts you in a bad mood. So like, if I was planning to meet somebody at the airport and then my flight got delayed 3 hours, and then I landed and then got a text saying, hey, take a cab, it's not just like a normal, hey man, schedules aren't aligning, can you take a cab? It's, I'm cranky because I sat in an airport, in his case, in Fort Lauderdale for 4 hours longer than I had planned, right? So, I figured if he was stressed about the delay, what better way to reduce the stress than to see this when he lands in Cleveland, right? So,
no, I mean, seriously, that was really cool. That was really cool. So, was it once you came back to the show after you got Orlando that the Banks thing went down, or was it before you went?
before, like
Okay.
I landed, got my car, went straight to the show, waited in line for an hour to get my badge, came up to the floor. As soon as I walked on the floor, the first person I saw was Scott from Reindeer Studios.
Mm-hmm.
He and I started chatting. I texted you that I was there. You said, basically, let's go meet at Ash's table. And I said, cool, where's that? Because,
Yeah.
there's no maps or anything.
No, why would we do that?
So then you said, look up in the air. There's a big circular sign that says women's restroom. It's sort of near that. So I said, perfect. So we walked over, went to Ash's table, and we were looking at cards, right? And then Ash is like, oh, here's a stack I just bought. You might like something in there, which is funny because one of the cards I bought, he had in there in a grade that I was looking for, but it didn't have the eye appeal for the grade that I wanted. So I ended up not buying it, but we found an even cooler card in that stack.
Well, and he handed the stack to you and he said, why don't you guys look through this? I just picked it up. I haven't priced it yet, but I know what kind of stuff you like. And it was a stack of some banger cards like Garrigs and Ruth and some Hall of Fame rookies and stuff.
Yeah, it had like an Aaron rookie in it. It was a pretty solid stack.
And so about halfway through the stack, you're flipping through them. I'm looking over your shoulder and you stop and I go, oh man. And you go, look, dude, that's a pretty nice looking Banks. And you just hand it to me and I start looking at it. And then between us, kind of looking over our shoulder, was my dad.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad's like, oh my gosh, that's really nice.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's where that whole thing unfolded. And then, I've told the story a couple of times, but
and I really enjoyed watching this because I haven't told my version of the story yet.
Okay.
So what I liked, and your version is 99% accurate, but the part that I don't think you've mentioned is when I first handed you the card and you're looking at it, your dad and I are both like, that's really nice. And you implied that there was some sort of green tint on the card. And your dad and I are like, there's absolutely no green tint, because I think in the back of your mind, you never thought you'd find the right one. Like that was like, that card for you is no matter how nice it was, there was always a reason why. And I think your reason why in this case was pretending that there was a green tinge on it that wasn't actually there. So your dad and I are like, there's no green tinge. And then after we convinced you that the white part of the card was, well, white, then boom, the whole rest of the story that you've described is right on.
Yeah. So here it is again. If you haven't seen it, again, this
See all the green on there, guys.
This is a card, obviously, that for a long, long time has been at the very top of my list. I mean, how could anybody not look at an Ernie Banks rookie card and go, that's a cool looking card? I mean, everything about the card is just beautiful.
That's first of all, congratulations on getting your Grail card. That's really, really awesome. Super, super happy for you. And I'm pumped that you got it, because that's a card I don't have. And I didn't want to buy one knowing that you were chasing one. I would have felt kind of like a bad friend. So now that you have yours, now I can add it to one of my lists.
One of them. Yeah. One of the lists. So, I mean, that was super special. Obviously, the fact that, Scott Reindeer Studios was there and Mookie walked up and Theo walked up and the whole thing was magical. And it was from Ash. And, Ash is such a good guy. And then he gave me a killer deal. Just he basically sold it to me at his cost, and
Yeah.
it just was awesome. So yeah, it's fun to just look at it. Like I still am kind of in disbelief that I have it, but I do.
That's awesome. I mean, and that's how you know you got the right card, because I've definitely bought cards before. It shows.
Hmm.
Yes, there's the green. It's on the back, not the front.
I know.
Um, I've definitely been at shows before where I picked up multiple cards and I get home and I look at them for a second and I put them in a box.
Yeah.
And then I look at them later and say, huh, I don't know why I bought that. When you buy a card and you look at it a lot, and then when you go, you put it away, and then you go back to it and look at it like, weeks, months later, and you look at it and you're like, wow, I love this card. I'm so like,
Yeah.
it makes you excited to see it. Then you absolutely know you made the right move, right? So
Yeah.
that's awesome.
So now, so that next morning, we um we went out to breakfast. Me and you and my dad went out to breakfast with Mookie Chilson
Yep.
and his buddy Pete.
Yep.
And we went to the upscale restaurant. I think it was called IHOP IHOP. Was that what it was?
Off.
Something like IHOP. And yeah, so we went out to breakfast, got to the show, and the doors pretty much were opening. And then we continued the hunt. Now, the first night, correct me if I'm wrong, you didn't buy anything the first night, right?
No, I didn't. But before we get into that, I have to give our waitress at IHOP props. The day that we went for breakfast, the restaurant was more than half full. It was her and then one cook. So she was the hostess and waiting on every single table.
Yeah.
And she did a good job. And I forgot her name, so I feel bad. But if she happens to be watching this, you did awesome.
Yeah. She really did. I don't think she's watching.
Probably.
But yeah, but she did a great job.
So yeah, then
yeah.
we got to the show and I was looking around. I didn't really know exactly what to chase after. I think you and I stuck together for a while.
Fair amount. It's hard though, because like, in a show that big, that's crowded that much, like we'll say, hey, let's head around together. And then you head around, and then the next thing you know, like you kind of split up and you try to stay together, but then you kind of split up and you just go, okay, that's just part of it. We'll hook back up soon. And so, you're kind of in and out of looking at cases together.
Right.
But you still hadn't bought anything, but there was one card that I saw the night before that I just kept thinking about. And I was like, it was completely not on my radar. It was a card. I don't even know if I'd seen it before, but I went to sleep that after that first night having the banks. And I was like, okay, well, next I kept thinking about this one card, and that was this card, which was my second purchase, which I got pretty early on Thursday, which was this Roger Peckinpah. And it's an M1014. And the thing I like about it is it's one of his few cards where he's actually on the Yankees. And again, I've talked a lot about how I collect Yankee captain cards. It's one of the blank backs, not an advertising back. And so I'm picking up a Yankee captain card of a guy who won an AL MVP, and it's as a Yankee. The other card I have, he's as a Senator. So that was my second pickup. And you were still kind of scouting, but then shortly thereafter, I think you made your first buy, didn't you?
I did. So I found this card.
Now, I wasn't with you. Who was with you when you bought this one?
Nobody. So I actually was with you and your dad. And then we were walking, and then I stopped and looked, and you guys kept walking. So I remember I was looking at the card, and one of my viewers came up and was like, "Excuse me, are you Darren?" I'm like, "Oh, hey, nice to meet you." And he's like, "Hey, nice to meet you too. Is Graig here?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "He's right over there." Like, and I pointed down like 3 or 4 tables, and he saw you, and he was like, "Oh, I'm gonna go say hey to Graig." I'm like, "Sweet." So then he walked away, and then I found my first pickup,
which is a pretty big pickup.
Yeah, I was super pumped to get this. I actually was looking at picking this up at Strongsville last year, And
So if
and
you're
the one,
listening, Darren's holding up a 34 Gaudi Lou Gehrig, the number 37 with the yellow background, the one with the big smile, and it's from like his shoulders up.
mhm.
And that is a card that you had targeted at Strongsville, and you found a nice one at Strongsville, but it was severely overpriced. So
Yep.
you didn't pull the trigger on that one, but you ended up grabbing this one, which I think
Yeah.
is
So I actually,
really good eye appeal on it.
thank you. Yeah, at Strongsville, the first one I found was a 3, but it didn't look like a 3. And I was like, yeah, maybe it's just me. So I asked Andrew Nuffsaid, he was standing right by there, and I said, can you take a look at that Gowdy Gehrig at this case? He took a look and he walked away. And then I caught back up with him and he's like, yeah, no, that definitely has terrible eye appeal for a 3. So I didn't buy that one. Then I found another one, and the guy wanted like, I don't know, like 6,000 more than comps, and he wouldn't come down on it. So I didn't buy that one. Then I found a third one, which I actually liked, and I almost bought it. But then when I looked at it closely, it had a white print line across its face.
Hmm.
So I didn't want that because that would just, I can't deal with, I mean, certain cards, if they have a little bit of a print line, no big deal. But on that card, my favorite part of the card is his smiling face,
Sure.
and having a white line through the middle of it kind of threw that off. So didn't buy it at Strongsville, picked up this one, super happy. So then after that, I was kind of walking around a little bit, and my best friend John, he drove up from Virginia. He texted me and said, hey, I'm in town. I'm grabbing lunch. Come meet me. So I drove over to meet him, and he actually gave me this card that a different buddy of mine, Jeff, gave to him to give to me, which goes in. It's a great card for my modern collection. It's a Gleyber Torres rookie card. I think
Nice.
Jeff gave it to me as a gift. He knows I like the Yankees, and I think it's a little bit of a joke as well because of how good Gleyber Torres is. So that was super generous of him. That was a nice gift. So thank you, Jeff, for that. So then that was what, Thursday. So
Yeah.
then that night,
So we had the YouTube party that night.
right. So I left early, and actually I picked my dad and brother up at the airport. We drove from there straight to downtown Cleveland to go eat dinner. My buddy John met us there. We had dinner, and then I dropped my dad and brother off at the hotel. They were tired from traveling, and then I headed over to the YouTube event. And I was probably about an hour late for that. So I know I've had a few people comment that they were there and they didn't see me. So sorry, I was late. So I apologize if I missed you. Definitely next year, I look forward to the event and look forward to meeting everybody that I missed this year. So apologies for that.
Yeah, I was a little late to that one as well. I was over at Mookie and Pete's Airbnb, and Pete and my dad were in heavy negotiations for a 53 mantle.
Nice.
And so they were kind of going back and forth on that. We were looking through. Pete had some cards he wanted to sell. So we were kind of going through those. So I was a little bit late. And when I got there, it was like slammed. I could not believe how many people were there, but it was very cool. And I got to meet a few people that I had met before. It was interesting because there were like some YouTubers that I had never met that I didn't really have a chance with a lot of them to get to talk with them the whole trip. There were a few guys I met very briefly, a few people I met in person, but like Mangini, I talked to a couple of times briefly. I talked Dylan and Rick Vintage Oddball Cards and I were on the same flight, so we were sitting at the terminal at the gate, and I got to talk to them for an hour before we got on the plane. But other than that, I didn't see them that much at the show. But so it was cool to meet some people at the YouTube event. Is there anybody that you spent a lot of time talking to at that, or that?
Yeah, I mean, I talked to a bunch of people. When I was out front, I talked to a bunch of people that I've already met, and we just had some good conversations. And then I went inside and I met Lou Rock in person for the first time, which was cool. I met Dylan in person for the first time. And then I went. There was like a room off the back that was sort of like a shed type. I don't even know, like a sunroom or something. It looked like almost like a garage, but it had like windows. I met George Diamond Yard out there. I met Vince, New York Yanks fan 7, and Joe Silver Jackify. I had a really good conversation.
Oh, I never got to meet Silver Jackify. I really like his channel a lot.
Yeah, me too.
And I don't think I ever even like made eye contact with him the whole show, unless I'm forgetting. But yeah.
So that was fun. And then, after there, I went back to the parking lot, jumped in my rental minivan, which was pretty awesome. And then, was called that a night. So then Friday, we met at the same IHOP for breakfast 2 days in a row.
Yes, so we went back. We loved the IHOP so much. We went back. I got the exact. Now we're forgetting the whole cornhole game, and I know that you are trying to just brush this under the rug. How Mookie and I slayed you and Theo, and we'll let that go. But there was that on Wednesday night.
That's true.
We forgot that on Wednesday night we did go over to the Matt from The Card Story had a house, and there were about 13 or 14 guys crammed into that, and some great guys, and I don't want to start naming who was there and who wasn't, who stayed there, because then you leave one guy out and you feel like a jerk. But just some of my favorite guys were in that house.
Yeah.
We weren't invited to stay in it with them, which is fine. But
I was. I actually
were you really?
But yeah, but I already had my hotel. So.
Maybe I should be offended. That's cool. Well, congratulations on being invited.
Everybody was like 3 hours late because the traffic getting out of the show was so bad that night. So actually, I got there earlier, and I met up with Dan, and then he and I went actually and picked up the pizzas and got back, and still nobody was there. So we started crushing those, and then after we ate about half the pizzas, people started showing up.
So then the next day we met at IHOP again, and this time it was me and my dad. It was you and your dad and your brother.
Yep.
So that was super cool. Like we'd been talking about doing a meal with our dads and your brother for 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was really fun. It was my best opportunity to really talk, especially to your dad, and hear about his collection and that was really cool. And then your dad picked up the tab, which made it even better. I mean,
that was nice.
It was really nice. So that was a lot of fun. And then we went back to the show.
Yep.
And then that day you spent most of the time. So this is now on
Friday.
Am I forgetting? Yeah, Friday. You actually, I forgot. I did buy one more card on Thursday. So on Thursday, my goal card for the whole trip was the T206 Cobb red portrait. And so the first loop I made through the whole show, 90% of my attention was looking for that card. And I didn't find one. Now, there were some in there, but either it didn't have the eye appeal, or it was too high of a grade, or too out of my price range. But there wasn't one that fit my budget and my eye. And so then I made a second loop between the first night and the second day, because my second card that I was targeting was the T206 Cy Young portrait.
Mm-hmm.
And same sort of, and there were a couple that were close on that one. And then I started going, well, now what? Those were kind of the two at the top of my list. Now I'm not hanging my head, because at this point I've got the Banks, right? And I've got this Peckinpah that I love. But I was like, well, I would like to pick up one more kind of big card. And so then I turned my attention to the Nap Lajoie portrait, T206, and the Walter Johnson hands at chest card. And I went through the whole show again, and I'm moving kind of quickly when I'm looking for like a card. And I was like, man, I didn't see anything. And then I remembered that behind the PSA booth, there were about 10 booths that were kind of hidden back there that I had missed the set, like the whole day Wednesday. the whole day Thursday. And so I'm like, oh yeah, there's some back there. And then there was this really cool dealer, Andy, and he had like 3 cards I wanted. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, like this guy has like literally 3 cards I want to buy. And one of them is the third card I bought, the third and final card that I bought, which is the Walter Johnson. Now I was hoping to get this card in a 2, but for me,
it's a sweet
this
card.
this one was a 3. Centering's like perfect. Corners are pretty darn nice. It's got a little bit of tobacco staining along the white edge, which is the reason it's a 3 and not higher. And the back is so bright it like glows. Like it just is so sharp and such a nice back. And I'm not really a back guy, but at the same time, like it's nice when it's nice. So I was that I picked up at the very end of the day, Thursday. So
Nice.
so I forgot that. So I'm forgetting stuff, but we're circling back. So we're probably being confusing. So it's back now to Friday.
Yes.
We're done with breakfast. Your pop just paid for us, and we now head over to the show. And now that day, you spent a lot of the time circling through the show with your dad and your brother. You guys kind of hung together mostly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so tell us about what went down for you that day.
So that day, we were looking around for a couple different cards for me and my brother. My dad actually, he was looking for a Ramley Willie Keeler, but he's looking for one like in a 6 or higher. He wants something that's super clean. So I told him it's probably more of an auction card. So we looked for that. He actually found a couple that were like 2s, 3s, 4s. He just didn't like one of them was pretty close, but it had like a ink stain on the gold border. So he didn't like that. So we looked for that. My brother was looking for a bunch of different cards. I was looking for one card in particular, and we found it and ended up buying it from Ash. And that was the 52 Topps Jackie Robinson.
Now that is a massive card. Now there was one that I know that you saw, we saw on Wednesday night at the very first table when you walk in, and it was different. It was also very nice, different than this one, but you decided to kind of against that one and for this one. So how did that all play out?
The one I looked at, I think, was a 4.5. I really liked it. I just wasn't ready to pull the trigger yet. And one of our viewers, Rocco, ended up buying it. He showed it to us on Friday morning. He's like, "Hey guys, check out my pickup." And I was like, "Awesome. I was looking to buy that." So Rocco is super, super nice guy. He was with his son. Him and his son walked around with me for a while trying to help me find another one. And he saw, because he was looking at, so he had a couple that he had seen, and he was trying to find the vendor who had it. And we were texting each other, and super, super nice guy. His son's a great kid. Like it was super cool to hang out with them, super cool to meet them. But he bought the one we were looking at. So then I found this one at Ash's table, and I absolutely loved it. I mean, the only thing, it's almost, to me, it's almost perfect. It's a little off center top to bottom, but left to right's really good.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm describing it, just show it. Left to right's really good. And my big thing is the red. I wanted the red without any snow on it. So
you've been talking about that card also, like the Graig, for a while, and your big criteria had always been you wanted the red to be a really solid red without a bunch of snow and stuff. And the image on that one is fantastic. And those 52 tops are so hard to find centered. And like you said, side to side, the centering on that is fantastic. So when you're buying a card that's not a 7, it's going to have something wrong with it.
Right.
It's just a matter of what's the thing you're going to choose that you can live with and doesn't bother you. And so, like with the Walter Johnson I just showed, which is a 3, it's got a little bit of tobacco staining, which to me adds a little bit of character to it, to be honest with you. But the centering is great. The corners are great. The image is great. And those were the things that were way more important to me. And just like with you, with the Jackie, the things that you have been saying, I really wanted to have this, this, and this. It had all of those things.
Right. Exactly. So for me, it was the perfect card. So I was super pumped to get that. And then the rest of the day after that, we just walked around. My brother was looking for some cards. I kept getting separated from them, and the cell phone signal was so crappy I couldn't call them, or we text and the text wouldn't go through. So then I just started kind of wandering around. I met a bunch of I met a bunch of my subscribers, talked to a bunch of people. It was great, and we caught back up at the end of the day. And one of the things that was funny is, like, I'd been walking a bunch of steps every day, leading up to the national. And one of the things I realized at the end of the day, like, my legs were killing me. And I'm like, why? I go, I'm walking 15 to 20,000 steps a day. I'm only at like 9,000. And I realized when I'm walking a bunch of steps during the day, I'll walk, I'll sit at my desk and work, I'll stand up, I'll walk again, I'll go do, this was, you stand up, you walk, and when you're not walking, you're standing, right? So, like, my legs were killing me. I was kind of out of it. We were basically leaving, and we stopped by a vintage dealer who had a pretty good selection of cards. There's one card in particular I was looking at, and it wasn't it looked really nice, but when I looked closely, it had like micro wrinkles on the front, a bunch of them. So I was like, I don't want to do that. So I was kind of disappointed. And then my dad was like, hey, this card looks cool. And I was like, which one? And he goes, the one you're staring at. And I looked down, and it was the card I haven't been able to find anywhere for like 9 months. It was the Exhibit 4-in-1 with Graig and I. So I've been looking for this card forever. It was my goal card at Strongsville. Nobody had it. I couldn't find any on auctions, couldn't find any online, couldn't find it anywhere. And I literally was so out of it that day that, like, by that time of the day, I'm staring at the card in the case and didn't even see it. So luckily, my dad, being 75 years old, is way more, on top of things than I am. And he was like, hey, dummy, check it out. So I'm like, oh, perfect. So then I picked that one up. So Friday was a sweet day, right? Because I got the Jackie Robinson I wanted, and the exhibits that I've been searching for forever. So that was fantastic. And then obviously after that, it was a great night, because then we went to Ash's thing.
Yeah.
Also known as Greg's birthday party.
So let me explain this. So Ash last year did some sort of get together with a bunch of people from his Facebook groups. Because Ash is big in Facebook. And he and I had been, talking or texting or something. He and I communicate pretty regularly. And he said, hey, I'm doing a get together at the National. I'm going to get like a restaurant, a venue, something. And, I'm going to get like 80 to 100 spots. If you want to invite, like, I don't know, like 20 people, like, you're welcome to just fill like 20 of the spots. So I was like, yeah, for sure. Because when you go to a place like this, you want to hang out with your friends, but you can't show up at a restaurant and say, hey, yeah, there's 30 of us. Like, that doesn't work. So that's why some of the people doing the Airbnbs make sense, is because there's like a central place to hang out. And so I was like all about that. So I just sent a text to like 3 or 4 people. And I was just like, hey, is this something you guys would be interested in? And you're like, yeah, me, my dad, and my brother would go. And I'm like, cool. And Mookie was like, yeah, me and Pete will go. I'm like, cool. And Theo's like, well, how much room do you have? I go, well, I know there's some spots. And he says, okay, it sounds like there's 15 of us. And I was like, oh, okay. So he basically sent a text to the thread that had all of his housemates on it. And they were like, great, this sounds great, which it is great. And so then it kind of evolved to where of Ash's like 80 spots, just from like me sending like 3 original texts. I was like, well, if there's anybody else, let me know. And Ash was super cool about it, and ended up having about 40 of the 80 people ended up being people through just kind of the word of mouth of just a few of us. And it was great. I mean, it was a lot of fun. It's a really nice place. They had ribs and mac and cheese and brisket, a bunch of stuff and we had a whole patio to hang out on, and I mean, it was fantastic. And so I had kind of, as a joke to try to get you guys to say yes, I said, this is Ash's party, but my birthday's the next day, Saturday. So if you're thinking about maybe I'll go, I'm going to guilt you guys into actually saying yes by calling it Ash is throwing me a birthday party. And so that was pretty effective. And so that was fantastic. And, it's one of those things where it's like when you have a wedding, you're like, well, who do I need to invite? And then you're like, well, do I need to send a message to that person or that person? And then it's like, well, that person's going to this event. And so it's like, where does it start? Where does it end? But I think it kind of ended up being perfect. It was, I know Silver Jackify and those guys have a party that they do that night. And I know there were some other things going on. And so it was just cool to get to hang out with, 80 cool collectors.
Yeah, no, it was a good time. That was definitely fun. Yeah, and then so we did that night, and then Saturday you flew home. Mm-hmm. I went back to the show with my dad. My brother actually had a coworker that is a remote worker that he's never met in person, but they've worked together forever. So she's based in Toledo, I think. So he went and met up with her and her husband for lunch. So he wasn't with us in the morning, but my dad and I went back to the show. We looked at a bunch of different things. I picked up 2 cards. One is the 65 mantle for my wife's collection.
Now, this 65 mantle you're holding up is in an SGC 4.5, if you're listening, and it's like perfectly centered with really beautiful, bold colors.
Yeah, I mean, I think on the back, on the corners on the back are because it's blue, right? So there's a little bit of white on the corners.
I don't know that for a 4.5.
It's a clean.
I really think that 3.5 to 5 range right now is really the money spot because they're nice looking cards in a lot of cases, but you're paying so much less than a 6 would be. It's even the banks, the banks. I mean, all the cards I bought. I mean, the Walter Johnson's a 3, right? And it's really nice, I think. The Peckinpah's a 5. That's really nice, I think. And the Banks is a 5. And that's really nice. And it's like, if you go to like a 1.5, a lot of the times, not always, sometimes the cards show a lot more wear. But once you get to like the 2.5, 3 range, like the cards are usually pretty decent.
Yeah,
especially for cards that are 100 years old.
Yeah, they don't have wrinkles. But then, and I agree with you, but then you see cards like our new friend Dave showed us, and you're like, oh, that's what these 110-year-old cards look like in an 8.
Why don't you tell everybody that story? So if you watched my video of day 2 of the National, I showed off this collection of some incredible cards, Cracker Jacks and 7s and 8s, Tetro 6s and 7s and 8s. Amazing cards.
Yeah.
But tell them how that unfolded.
So that was Thursday, right? Yeah, it was Thursday. Mm-hmm. I was looking around, and luckily for me, my phone got a signal during this like period of time where I'm in the back of the show, which was perfect, right? And it was Orlando calling me, and he's like, I need to see you. I need to see you. You need to come here. And I'm like, okay. And Orlando usually is very kind of relaxed. So when he was like, you gotta come here, I'm like, oh, something's wrong. So I, came cruising across to over by where the food trucks were.
Now let me pause real quick and just interject that I also got a text from Orlando.
Yes.
And it said, where are you? And I texted him back and I said, I'm over by Tim Payne's table. What's going on? And then I never got a text back from that. Now, I don't know if he never got mine or if he sent a response or what, but that was the only communication I had heard at that point. So go ahead.
So then I get over there and Orlando introduces me to Dave. Super nice guy. Super nice guy. He's a subscriber of both of our channels. Just super, super nice guy. And he's like, hey, I brought some cards that I'd like to show you. So it was Orlando, myself, and John Mangini. So we walked back to the corner, and Orlando's like, let's go back to the corner where it's more private. I'm like, huh? Because, a lot of times at the show, viewers will come up to us and say, hey, check out my pickups, right? And you're like, oh, a lot of times they're super sweet pickups. But when they're like, let's go to the corner where there's less people, I'm like, this could be interesting. So we walk over to the corner, and then Theo came over, and Dave had a little bag. He unzipped it. And the first card that he pulled out was a 34 Gaudi Gehrig, literally this card that I had just bought the night before, right?
In a
No,
3.
the night before. I just bought this the night before, and I was super proud of my 3, right?
Right.
And that was the first card he pulled out, and he had it in an 8. So I was like, whoa. So then he pulled out a 33 Gaudi Ruth 181, the green one, in a 7.5, I believe. And then the yellow one, I think, either the red or the yellow one in an 8. And then number 144, the batting one, in an 8. Right. And I'm like, what is going on? So I'm like,
and just give people an idea if they're not familiar with those cards. In these grades, what do you estimate each of these cards to value at?
I would honestly, from the ones I just mentioned, I would honestly estimate that each one of those is a nice house.
Yeah.
So he's showing me these cards, and I'm freaking out. And then Orlando, I look over at Orlando, and Orlando's literally like, that's not even the best. And I'm like, what is going on? So then John Mangini's looking at it, and we're both looking at each other like, what the heck, right? He then pulled out a 52 tops Jackie Robinson in an 8, a 52 tops Willie Mays in an 8, and a 52 tops Mickey Mantle in a 7.5. So then at that point, we're just like, this is absolutely ridiculous. This is so awesome.
And now, what do you estimate those 3 cards would be?
I would say that
the Mantle's got to be pushing $1 million, don't you think?
Right. I would say that the Jackie in the Maze are very, very nice houses, and the Mantle for sure would be. There was an 8 that was that just auctioned. I think it went for 1.25, and his was a 7.5. So yeah. I mean, ridiculous, right? And then he then pulled out a Cracker Jack Walter Johnson, the 1915 Cracker Jack Walter Johnson in the 7, a 1915 Cracker Jack Honus Wagner in a 7, a 1915 Cracker Jack Christy Mathewson in an 8, and then pulled out, like, I literally almost fainted, a 1915 Cracker Jack Ty Cobb in an 8. And I was like, what is going on? This is so awesome, right?
So now, how do you reach out to me? Like, because you're like Greg's. So does he say, hey, is Greg around? Or do you say, I got to text Greg? Like,
yeah, I think he and I were talking about you. So I'm like, I need to get Greg over here. So I called you, and you're like, hey. And I'm like, you have to come over here right now. And you're like, okay. I'm like, no. Now, whatever you're doing, drop what you're doing, come over here right now. And you're like, okay. So, you're like, uh-oh, there's something wrong with Darren. So it's time to get rolling.
I start power walking through the crowd over to behind the coffee food truck where you told me to meet you.
And I can't remember who it was, but somebody stopped you.
Mangini.
Yeah. And he was talking to you, and I'm like, talk to him later. Come on.
He was talking to me about something completely different. He was and I was like, hey man, let me circle back to you. Like, Darren needs me for something.
Yeah.
And then that's when he showed me all the cards. So, and at that point I asked him, is it okay if I take pictures? And he was like, of course. And I was like, would you be okay if I showed these on my video? And he was like, what's the point in owning cards if you don't share them? And that's Dave. He's just a great dude.
He's such a sweetheart. I really, really like Dave.
And so I was like, yeah, like great. So again, if you want to see the cards we're talking about, it was, maybe we can link it to the in the description below, but it's my day 2 of the national video. I think it was my day 2 video. I'll make sure, but we'll link it in the description down below, and so you can see it in the middle of the video. It goes through, and I video all of the cards, and there were others. These
Yeah,
aren't the only cards. There were some T206s, and there were um
he
there,
he had a he had the Cap Anson,
yeah,
the which one
the
was it?
N20,
The
was it the
Goodman.
N28 Cap Hansen?
Yeah, he had that in
Yeah,
like the 7.
yeah. I
So
mean, it was amazing.
I don't know if you guys could see it, but here's a picture I took, or Theo took, I think. There's the Jackie, the Mickey, and the Willie.
It's amazing.
So it was, I mean, it was that was, I have to say, meeting Dave and seeing his cars was one of the highlights for me of the show.
Without any question.
Yeah.
Okay, it's my day 2 video. We'll put a link to it down
We'll,
below.
we'll link it. Yeah. So then, um, so now we're back to Saturday. So, we're walking around. I picked up that mantle for my wife's collection. And then, I was like, I wanted to get one more card, right? I mean, I picked up 3 pretty awesome cards.
Yeah.
Well, 4, the mantle plus the other 3, right? Picked up 4 pretty awesome cards, but I'm like, I want one more card. And I wasn't sure what I wanted. I was looking at some like Cobbs, some like not, some early Cobbs that weren't T206s.
And just to remind people, you had kind of made a list of about a card a month. And at this point, you had pretty much completed that list.
It was done.
So
Yep.
and so there were no more cards that were kind of on your radar,
Right.
but you still have a day of the national, which is once a year.
Right.
And you're like, well, I got to at least look for something. So on the fly, the list is starting to regenerate.
Right. Version 3 or 4 of the list for the year.
Right.
And shout out to Mike Petty. He called that. He said, "You're not going to stop when the list is done." I said,
Right.
"Well, let's see." And he's right. So we're looking around, and then I was looking at all these different cards. I was looking at some Honus Wagner cards. I was looking at some Ty Cobb cards. I was like, I don't know exactly, because for me, once I put it on the list, then I become comfortable with hey, that's a good one to get. When I don't have a list to go off of, then it's like I'm getting overwhelmed looking at all these different things. So
Right.
I kept looking at stuff, and I think I was driving my dad nuts, because I was like, let's go back to this table. Let's go back to this one. I was going back and forth between Tony E-Trade and Ash, back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. I'm like, I don't know what to get. And I finally was like, I kind of want to get another Ruth card. So I was looking around. I found some that I liked. And then I kind of said, what my favorite Gaudi Ruth is the green one. I think that's just a cool image. I mean, I know people probably get pissed when I say this, but Ruth kind of looks like a pig a little bit in it. Not like a term for something gross, but a pig like the animal a little bit. So I thought it was just like it's a cool image, right? So
Because you had the yellow one.
I have the yellow one. Yep.
Okay.
So I have the yellow one, and the red one's the same image as the yellow one. So I'm like, I don't necessarily need the red one yet. I want to get all 4 because I think that'd be kind of cool to have them. So I was between the batting pose and which is number 144, and then 181, which is the green one. And I was going back and forth, and I started seeing, and I always noticed the number 144, the batting one, because that to me, I think it's not the rarest or the most valuable of the 4, but it's, I think, kind of the most famous one. Like when you think of the 33 Gaudi Ruths, you kind of think of that one, right? So I noticed those more, I guess. And then I started looking, I'm like, you know what? I like the green one. I mean, I've always liked the green one, but I started looking at multiple green ones. I really like them. And I was finding them either in a 1, and they were kind of like dirty ones.
Yeah.
And then I'd find them in like a 3, and they were just too expensive. And I was kind of jumping around back and forth. And I'm like, you know what? I would like to find one of these in a 2. So I found a couple of 2s. One had a print line on it. One had, I mean, it might not be print, it might have been like a scratch even. One of them was really off center. One of them had like the borders were like almost black, and I saw the price points of these. So then we ended up going into the other side, right? The other room, the not the main room, but the room with the lower ceiling that had more modern stuff. And we're looking around, and we're at Stan's table, and this guy was there, walked up right in front of me and asked to see the green roof. He had a really nice centered two. The guy asked to see it, and I'm like, sorry. I was like, oh shit, here we go. He's looking at it. He brings his friend over, shows him. His friend stands there, holds it. He goes and comes back with somebody else. They look at it. He pulls his phone out. He's looking at VCP. He's looking at eBay. And I'm like, hey, man, if you're not going to make a move, he's like, oh, yeah, stupid. I'm like, all right, whatever. Take your time. I'm just standing here. Like, I'm going to buy this card if you don't. And Stan's like, what do you want to look at? I'm like, this one when he's done. And the guy turns around kind of annoyed. He's like, I might buy this. I'm like, yeah, I could tell. And I was just waiting and waiting. And then my patience was just rocking and rolling. And my dad was getting annoyed standing there too. So he started walking around a little bit. And the guy put the card back down on the case and then asked a question about a different card. So I just swiped the card up and I'm like, I like this. I'll take it. And we negotiated the price a little bit. And I think this guy was pissed because he had not formally, said I'm not buying it, but I don't give a shit. So I got it. But that was the first time that I had a serious issue with my phone with connectivity. I couldn't use PayPal, wouldn't load, Venmo wouldn't load. I had cash, but not enough. So basically, we gave the down payment on it, and then I had to leave and use Venmo or PayPal, and it wasn't even working in the main room anymore. I went into the vestibule area. It didn't work. I literally walked out front, and then suddenly it worked. And he standing giving on his phone. He's like, here's my scan my whatchamacallit, not UPC, but whatever the
QR code.
QR code thing. I'm losing my mind. Scan the QR code, but it wouldn't load. So now I'm outside, and all I have is his business card, and it's like I can't remember his email address, but it has nothing to do or sound like Stan's cards, right? So I'm putting it in, and I'm like, PayPal or Venmo. One of them was like, there's two different ones. I'm like, I'm about to send a lot of money to the wrong person. I'm going to literally lose my mind. So I was out there, and I'm like, and I just sent it, and I'm like, that was dumb. And then I'm waiting and waiting, and then it pops up saying that it was sent. And then I'm like, all right, Grace. And then I go back in to say, hey, I really hope you got that, because if not, I'm an idiot, right? So I go back in, and as I'm like walking up to his table, a thing popped up and said, received by Stan's cards. I'm like, phew. So he found it on his phone. We're good to go. And then made me realize I overpaid for the card, because I told him that Chris from Missouri sent me. And after we negotiated the price and I bought it and he had the money, he said, for this one, I got to take Chris. I owe him a steak dinner. So I was like, oh, fantastic. So Chris, remember, you have to hit up Stan. He owes you dinner. You're welcome.
Nice.
So picked up this.
Yeah, hold it up for us. It's a beautiful copy.
Yeah, I'm super happy with it.
It's a really nice card.
It's super, super clean. For being a 2, I think it's very well centered. I'm super happy with it. Like obviously this bottom corner is not fantastic. But other than that, I think I think if that was a little bit better corner, like the other corners, this probably would be like a 4. So I'm super happy with it because the registration's nice. The image is great. There's no marks on it. It's not faded. So it's just super, super happy to pick that one up as well. So I had five cards that I bought plus the gift from my buddy Jeff. And I was super happy because last year's National, I think I bought like 17 cards or something, 15 cards. This year,
but these were bigger cards.
Yeah, these were much bigger cards, right? So I was just thrilled to pick those up. And kind of to cap off the National, I hit 1,000 subscribers. I think,
and you're running a giveaway for that right
I
now.
am. And if you go to my channel, check it out. It's my 1,000 subscriber VR. Do the VR, and you'll be entered to win a T206 Christy Mathewson white cap. So, Greg, you haven't done a VR yet, so I just wanted to remind you.
So there's a couple of things here. First, well, when I got home, so I had picked up the 3 cards that I showed, right? The Walter Johnson, the Roger Peckinpah, and the Ernie Banks. But right before the National, right before I left, because people kept saying, what happens if you go and you find a card right before the National? Do you not buy it because the National's coming? And I'm like, no, you buy the card even if the National is coming, because if it's a card you'd buy at the National, why wouldn't you buy it before the National?
Mm-hmm.
So, I've got about 20 saved eBay searches, and one of them is Crackerjack PSA, and one of them is Crackerjack SGC, or maybe it's 1914 and 1915 Crackerjack for each, whatever. And this guy posted 10 really sharp Crackerjack cards. And usually with Crackerjack cards, because they're hard to come by, they're really thin cards, so they're usually thrashed. Like, they're almost paper thin. So they're usually in bad shape, or they're way overpriced. Well, this guy had like reasonable prices, like good prices. And so before the National, I bought 2 of his 10. And then there were 2 more that I saved, so that if I didn't buy a bunch of stuff at the National, I was going to come home and buy those as well.
Nice.
And so I ended up buying this Crackerjack of Armando Marsans. Now, if that name sounds familiar, it's probably because you're a subscriber of Orlando.
Mm-hmm.
He talks about Orlando Marsans a lot, who was one of the early Cuban players to, break into Major League Baseball. But I mean, these corners on the thing are insane.
How is that a 2?
For a 2. So it's hard. It'd be hard to show right here, but right down here, it's got a little crease. Right about here, it's got a little crease right there. And other than that, and it's hard to see. You have to look at it, and it's a crease. It goes all the way through. But other than that, I mean, it's like a 7.
Mm.
And then the other one I bought is, I've been collecting the T206 Hall of Famer run, trying to slowly go through that. And one of the T206 Hall of Famers I don't have is Ed Walsh. So Ed Walsh goes by Big Ed Walsh. And Ed Walsh I think he's the last player to have 40 wins in a season. Mm-hmm. He's got the lowest career ERA of all time. He didn't have a long career, but when he pitched, he was dominating. He had 30 wins a couple of times. And he had an Ed Walsh in a 3. And I still don't know. There's a little bit of an area that maybe has a little bit of a surface rub to it, but it is so sharp. It is unbelievable. Mm-hmm. The red is so deep. It doesn't have any creases. And it's a 3. And I'm just like, it's just, I couldn't believe it. And so I was absolutely thrilled. Now, I saw 2 or 3 of this card, the Ed Walsh, in showcases at the National. And I think the lowest I saw it for was $2,150. And the other ones were between that and like $2,700. And in the same grade, in a 3. And they looked like 3s, though. This doesn't look like a 3.
Right.
And I paid $850 for it, which I just was like, it's literally a third of what it was going for at the National.
Yeah.
I was just like, commons of this set, like a common that looks like that is like a $250 card.
Yeah.
In a 3 that's that nice. So I'm just like, I have to buy it. So the other reason I did too is because he had a 30-day return policy. So I was like, well, if I get home from the National and I see it and I hate it because there's something I'm not seeing, I could just return it.
Mhm.
So that gave me some peace of mind. So
Nice.
yeah. So I actually at the National bought 3 cards, but with my national money, I bought 5.
Nice.
And we've been going an hour, so there's probably my dad, your dad, and somebody who fell asleep still listening, right?
My brother might still be listening.
You think?
He might be.
I hope so. I had fun hanging out with him.
Yeah, no, they had a blast. They had a blast.
Good, good. I wish I could have spent more time with them, but you know, it is what it is, I
Well,
guess.
you had dinner with them on Friday night, technically, right? You guys
Yeah, I
said
mean, it was. I was sitting here. My dad was on one side of me, and then our buddy Maple, and then you, and then your dad and your brother. So I was able to talk to them a little bit,
Mhm.
but they hadn't bought. Your brother might have bought something. Your dad hadn't bought anything. So it was a lot of like, things like that. People are like, oh, what'd you get? Let me see it. So I think I showed them my pickups, but they I'm trying to think if your brother had bought something.
He had some he picked up some mantles.
I don't know if I saw them.
Oh, you know what he had there? He had the oh no, he might have bought that Saturday. He got a 49 Bowman Jackie Robinson.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah, actually,
I
he got that on Saturday. So yeah, you
Yeah,
ate
I
him
didn't
for
see
dinner.
that.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. You'll have to send a picture of that to me. I'd love to
Well,
see
yeah,
it.
he needs. I'll have him. I'll have him send me one. I'll share it with you.
Okay, cool. Well, that's our just the two of us video.
Well, we
Um,
stayed on track. We talked about the national the whole
we
time.
kind of did. I don't
No,
know,
I talked about my giveaway, so that's sort of.
but just for a minute or two.
I know. I know.
We need to get back to our normal selves of just doing whatever we want.
Yeah, so like we need to do a video talking about our new lists since we knocked a bunch of stuff off.
Yeah, I would love to do that. I've got a couple of changes to my list, and so maybe we'll talk about that soon.
Nice. Yeah, I created a new list, but now
I
I'm like
saw it.
halfway done with it. So that's annoying.
You did a video of your new list, which
Yes.
is yeah, you've already knocked out like 3 of the 8, right?
Yeah.
No, it's fabulous. The new list is fabulous, and you'll have to link that video down below in case for the handful of people still listening, they can see what your new list is.
Right. Nice. All
All
right.
right,
Yeah,
dude. Well, you know how much I like doing this,
me
and
too.
whether people listen or not, that's all secondary. It's
I
really about
agree.
us hanging out.
I agree. Once this
So
posts, I'll re-listen to this while I'm at the gym.
I'll
All
I'll,
right.
re- I'll re-listen to it too while I'm driving to work next week.
Oh yeah, you're back. You're back
Oh,
on.
brutal, dude. It's brutal.
Nice. All right. Well,
All right.
thanks everybody for watching. If you're still watching, really appreciate it. We will catch up with you guys soon, and keep an eye out for our next off topic with a guest. Talk to you guys soon.